Welcome to Headway, a show that informs our audience about political issues that affect the nation, the region, and our local area. For the next few weeks, we will interview candidates for the 4th Congressional District of Massachusetts. On this episode, I'll be speaking with Colonel Julie Hall, a Republican congressional candidate. Julie is a former Attleboro City Councilor and an Air Force veteran who is very well known in the Attleboro area. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. As I mentioned in the open, I'm going to be speaking with Congressional Representative Julie Hall, who's running in a Republican primary against David Rosa. Hi, Julie. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah, I'm doing great. So, Julie, we all know you around here. You were Attleboro City Councilor for a while, and even before that, you were very involved in Attleboro organizations and everything. Can you just give us, and everyone knows you're a veteran because you're very involved in the veterans groups locally. Can you give us a little bit of your background and how it all led you here to running for Congress?
Sure. And I think what a lot of people don't know, and I didn't really talk a lot about my family at that point in time because, we were zooming right in on what are you going to do for Attleboro. And so this is a bigger district that comes about here. And it's sort of an interesting thing I'll tie together. But I did come from a very middle class family in Walpole. So I'm one of 7 brothers and sisters. So I'm one of them. I always say 7 brothers and sisters. And so my sisters and brothers call me and say, who's the 8th one? I'm one of those 7. And my father, he worked 2 jobs to get us, to put food on the table. He worked 2 jobs. My mother also worked as a nurse, and she would work the 3rd shift. She'd come home just in time to get breakfast on the table to get us kids off to school. So I think that our life and my life growing up is not too unfamiliar with a lot of people that are in most of this district. One of the things that people discuss is the way this district looks. All of the Democratic candidates come from either Newton, Brookline, or Wellesley. That's way up and north from us. And they're in a whole different zip code, a whole different socioeconomic area than we are. Very, very elite politicians, like the Kennedy family and so forth. So I am not that person. I don't come from a wealthy family. I don't come from a famous family, but I do come from a very sound middle-class family right here in this area. And it couldn't be any more central. I am right in the middle. If you look at it, I am almost smack dab geographically in the middle. So middle class, middle everything. I'm here to support these people that haven't been supported. And people say Truman, but that's not true. It hasn't been since Truman, but it's been quite some time that a Republican has even run in this area, and definitely a longer time than this area has been represented by a conservative voice and someone who probably is a little bit more middle class and a little bit more like the people that live down here. So that's one of the reasons why I'm running. Of course, my military background, I got my hair, here on the back of my neck when people started disrespecting the flag kind of a while ago. And that's, I think, just sort of built up, and it's gotten crazier and crazier as time went on. And I got to the point where I said, I just can't sit still. I have served my country my entire life. I raised my hand, made an oath that I would die for this country. And that hand never came down. So here I am, and that's another reason why I am in to do this and in to win this seat. We need to make sure that there's law and order. We need to make sure that we have safe communities for our children. We have to have great schools, and we have to have the opportunity for everybody to get a good paying job, a good profession. People want to contribute. And I think those 3 things are basically transcend either party. Doesn't matter whether you're Democrat or Republican. We all want safe neighborhoods. We all want to have good schools, and we want to make sure that we can make a living. So again, those are really the platform that I'm running on. How we get to those, I think that's where the parties differ.
All right. So you mentioned so you mentioned public safety and you mentioned law and order. So can you talk a little bit about, I saw that you recently got a FOP endorsement from, I believe, is that the Mass FOP? Is that what it is?
That is
Massachusetts
correct.
FOP? Okay.
It
Yeah,
is.
talk
It is.
about, so yeah, just tell me a little bit about why you got that endorsement and how that made you feel.
Sure. Listen, the Fraternal Order of the Police is actually a worldwide, not worldwide, but probably a countrywide fraternity, if you would, Fraternal Order of the Police. So that's where they are. And to be honest, I'm quite honored to get that endorsement. I mean, it goes right in line with my platform. It goes right in line what I believe in. I wear a uniform. I've worn a uniform. I still wear my uniform. And I believe that anybody that wears a uniform and puts their life on the line to keep us safe deserves every bit of our support, every bit of our honor. And that's why it's an honor for me to have been recognized by them, because I always say to them in my military term, I will always have your six. That means your back. I will always have their back because I know how that feels. I know recently what they've gone through. And here in Massachusetts, we've been working hard. I know the police have been working hard. And, I'll wait till maybe we can expound on that question because I know there's been a lot of, the defunding the police and so forth. And if you want me to continue
Yeah,
on with that,
go on. Yeah, go. You can keep
Sure.
talking about that. Talk about, yeah, like how as a
Sure.
in Congress, what you'd want to do to. I mean, if you feel like police need more funding or equal funding and not be defunded, however you feel, just kind of
Sure,
expand on that, please.
And I can only say from what I've seen here in the state of Massachusetts, and especially in District 4. In District 4, they have, what it's called the POP teams. What they do, which is, oh gosh, and I've said this so many times, but it's what they do is they focus in on different people, and they focus in on the actual people that they're getting involved with. They want more social workers. They wanted more case workers. So they have been working very, very hard within the state of Massachusetts to try to remedy some of these things that they've already seen. They want an increased training. They've been trying to get increased training. And again, the social worker and the case worker, I've talked to Chief Hegney several times about the problem. There you go. Problem-oriented policing. They wanted to get to the root of the problem because you have to fix the problem. You don't want to keep doing this all over and over again. So they have recognized that. And I think that the smartest thing that people need to know is you hear now social workers and case workers being talked about throughout the country. Mm-hmm. They have been talking about that right here in Attleboro for years and trying to get that funded to get extra people on their team. What you do not want to do is you absolutely do not want to send a social worker or a case worker out by themselves. I also have a degree in psychology, and I used to be a behavioral health specialist. And I can tell you, when you send somebody out for a domestic, somebody's going to have a weapon. Somebody is going to have a weapon. So, having an idea in your head that you're going to send a social worker or case worker to that door first, even if it sounds like there's nothing going on, is a very, very bad idea. And that's going to be a very, very bad problem if we go through with that. Somebody's going to get hurt in a very bad way. And unfortunately, it's going to come back and say, oh, you didn't triage it enough. You never know. I've been there. I've seen people that walk through my door that are fine, and then all of a sudden they snap, and there you go.
So are there no instances where like the homeless, for example, like dealing with the homeless, would that be a situation where a social worker could be the first line, or do you think the police would still be the first line? Okay.
Sure, absolutely, and that's why they wanted them to be part of their team. Okay. So this whole team concept of having social workers and caseworkers with them to work with them to be able to tell who's going to be dangerous and who's not going to be dangerous is something this team could have all talked about together. Yeah. And, for many years. So again, they have asked for it. The other thing is the resource officers. I think that's a very, very bad decision to take these resource officers out of the high schools. And the reason why I'm saying that is I've talked to many of them. I've been involved with the DARE program for quite some time. And these resource officers say that the relationships that they make with some of these children they tell them things that they would never tell anyone else about things that are going on in their home, again, that are probably dangerous for this child, and this child speaks to them. And they trust those DARE officers. So I think, taking those resource officers out of the schools is a very, very bad decision. It's just another person that these children can go to. Again, I do believe that, they should get, certified. I do believe that their record definitely needs to be looked at. If they have a history of abuse, if they have a history of, coming out of line and not following the regulations, that's in any profession. Yeah. You should have a system that you're able to get rid of those kinds of people. So to me, I believe they need to be funded more for those reasons, to be able to bring in the social workers, to bring in the caseworkers. The other thing that they want to do with the caseworkers and social workers, the opiate crisis. If you have a social worker or caseworker right there with you, they're the first line of defense, the police. Yeah. And if you had a social worker or caseworker right there with you, that the probability of that person following through on their treatment and getting to the proper people in the hospital, because normally what happens now is the police drop them off at the hospital, they bring them back to life, and off they go to do it again. So I think if they were able to have that done a lot quicker, that would be a lot better. So I think our police officers here in Massachusetts, and at least in this district, have been very forward thinking about some of these things already. We don't have the severe issues that other people have. Now, that being said, yes, I think that we always need to be looking at these kinds of things to see whether there's any kind of, systemic racism, systemic anything. Could be systemic sexism, okay? I feel like I've been a victim of that. So all of those things, all those isms need to be looked at.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your ideas for healthcare on a national level? I know you're not for Medicare for all or anything like that. I read a little bit about what your hybrid approach, and so you want to talk a little bit about that? Okay.
So I've been a hospital administrator in the military, which is the largest fully taxpayer-funded system in the world. Mm-hmm. And that being said, we controlled the largest part of our budget, which was the salaries, because we don't just pay people like if they're a neurosurgeon, they get more money. We pay by rank. So if you're a major, you get paid the same amount as another major. That is a huge part of any healthcare budget. And again, we were able to control that, and still our costs went up. And why? Because you can't control everything in the system. You can't control the electricity. You can't control the pharmaceuticals. There's so many things, so many variables that come into this. So I think that I think people would be surprised, though, of what I do want to do, and I think is important. I think that we need to pay more for the Medicare visits. We need to focus in on expanding the amount of money that we pay for Medicare and Medicaid, because not doing that puts those small hospitals, our community hospitals, like Sturdy is a perfect example, and our small health clinics that are in the city, puts them at a grave disadvantage when they go and compete against the other big hospitals that are out there, the for-profits. And what happens when they can't compete? Well, then they shut down, and then some bad things happen there. First of all, people don't have access to care in their area. They don't have access to care in their community. And now we've taken that entire population of people and we've moved them into the expensive system. And then we wonder why we're paying so much for healthcare. So there is some things that we need to do. And people think, I'm a little bit different as a Republican, saying we need to shore up Medicare and we need to make sure there's a safety net included for those people that don't have insurance. And those are, children going to school, those kinds of things. All of that should come under these programs. So in my mind, we already have a socialized medical system, if you want to say that. We just need to look at it a little bit closer, and we need to make sure that it's funded properly and those doctors are being paid properly for what they do. Very important that we have that system, and it's got to be very, very strong system. Now, within that system, you definitely want to add in the element of competition, even in a socialized medical system, even in the military. I brought in contractors, and I had these contractors compete for my population. And when they competed for my population, the cost went down. Obviously, when they compete, one wants to underbid. And people automatically translate this to bad. This is bad when they compete. It's absolutely not bad when they compete. Because when you put in your contract some elements of quality care and different standards that they have to meet, there's a way to do that. So we do have to have that market system that goes on within healthcare. The other part of it is you do have to have a pay system or a profit system. So a lot of hospitals, every healthcare system has to make a profit. you have to make a profit. So there's no such thing as not nonprofits. That's why they changed the word to not-for-profit, because in order to stay viable, you have to make a profit. On the profit side, where people are paying, that is a non-Medicare or non-socialized, hopefully we can generate the dollars there. And that's where that money and anything we can save there can be used to be shifted over to the other side. And that's what I feel is a more equitable system to do. So we need to have a place where we make a profit and a stable profit. And we need to have a place where we fund Medicare and Medicaid and the socialized system, whatever you want to call it. I hate that word. I just, if it's a better word, I come up with it. But that we allow that has to be comparable. We have to keep those doctors in there. We have to keep those hospitals viable. And the only way we can do that is by ensuring that they get paid a very similar amount of the market that the other for-profit hospitals get paid. So I hope I'm saying that, and it's making sense to people. So that's the hybrid system that I'm talking about. I think that people say, oh, well, what you're causing is if you can pay for it, you can have it. Well, that's capitalism. I mean, that's what we do. But I look at it more like the for-pay is portions of all of our economy, if you would, are the place that you generate dollars, and generating those dollars by using competition is what allows us to shift some of those money, over. So that's my thought.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about? I noticed on your website and your platform, you were focusing a lot on helping small businesses develop through government programs. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I've been very involved with the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which is small business. But from a standpoint, I've always had a special place in my heart for the small business because I believe they're the backbone of America. That's one of the things that makes America great is people to be able to go out and have their own business, to be able to say, hey, I'm Julie Hall and I want to start my own business. That's wonderful. A lot of people in other countries don't get to do that kind of thing. And that entrepreneurial, thought process that goes on has created many, many things that we see today. So I think that we need to support the small business. Right now, they're getting killed. All right. They're getting decimated with what's going on with COVID. I was talking to, one of I won't mention names because I don't know if they want their names mentioned, but right here we have a very well-known restaurant that's been here forever. Their family was, created here. They're struggling, and that's sad. And their backup business is catering. So it's very, very difficult for especially the restaurant business right now. So they're having a lot of difficulties. There is a restaurant, what's called the Restaurant Act, that's being talked about in Congress, $120 billion, package. And I hope that they do go through with that because I think we need that. So that's the way I look at small business too. You don't just put money out there and say, okay, we're going to have this money go to all the small businesses, and it's just all going to be the same. You have to target certain types of businesses because certain types of businesses need certain types of things. Not all businesses are the same. Not all healthcare is the same. We have to look at things in the differences that we are, and we have to have bills that target that particular business. So I would be more inclined to look for bills and to come up with laws or, come up with packages that will help a particular type of business that fits their needs. So those are the things I'm looking at with the small business. But again, we've got to get the first thing as soon as we got to get the economy back on track. That's going to happen. And then part of that is getting the small businesses up. People like to work. Yeah. They do. I know everybody says, I hate my job. Nobody's saying I hate my job right now. I think most people are saying, I'm glad I have one. Yeah. And people feel. So that's another issue that we're going to run into. And I know we can talk about that, but that's a whole other issue is the whole mental health issues that I think we're going to have to deal with soon.
Yeah, definitely. Can you talk a little bit about your tax plans? I know you're looking to lower the payroll tax, and you want to. I found this really interesting. Your idea of capping, making a cap for senior citizens' income taxes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think it's very important for our senior citizens. They've given so much to us, and they're competing against so many things right now. So if you look at Attleboro, for instance, it's a perfect example. we've just built a new high school, and it always puts the seniors and the younger families at odds all the time. Because the seniors look at that as that's going to raise my taxes, and so we should never ever put ourselves in a situation like that where our seniors are feeling as though they have to be fighting at odds with other people in the community. So a senior tax freeze, to freeze their taxes at a certain point so that they won't be vulnerable to these kinds of changes within their communities, I think is the right thing to do. They should know for the rest of their lives how much money is going to come in and how much money is going to come out. Being at the end years of their life, to have a huge burden like this in particular, interjected into them, changes their entire life and not for the good. And that's just, in my book, simply not fair. So we've got to find a better way to take care of those people and to allow them to live their lives with the expectation of the money that they have. Now, people are going to be at different various levels of income. And people say, well, there's some rich people out there, hey, if that's where they are, that's where they are. It's still the same, as far as I'm concerned, it's still sort of the same theory. If that's their expectations of what they live on, then that's what they do. And of course, there is going to be some adjustments for income levels and so forth and so on. But I think everybody deserves the right to know consistently what their payroll, if you would, is going to look like for the rest of their lives without a huge burden being put on them in a time when they just shouldn't be in that situation.
So the idea is they reach a certain age, whatever that may be, 65 or whatever it is,
right.
And then at that point their taxes are locked in at a rate for forever from that point onward.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be, yes, and I'm sure it could be, I would say, the most significant taxes, or something like a tax. They're going to have to pay real estate taxes, all the taxes they have. But what I want to do is shield them from things like this, where it's an additional huge tax burden that's going to have to be shared. But people say, okay, well, then my tax burden now is going to be greater. Well, you know what? It's you have to, it's almost, you have to kind of balance it off, and you got to give a little to get a little. But I think in particular, for the senior citizens, they've given so much, and we have to treat them fairly, and we have to make sure that the last years of their lives are the best years of their lives. And I hear people all the time saying that, first of all, they get increases every year. I mean, of food cost more. They're going to have to pay those normal increases. We can't freeze. It's like the healthcare. We can't freeze everything. But maybe that's just one thing we could do. And I think that's a huge thing that we can do, is just to keep them sheltered from that kind of a huge tax burden that they didn't expect. And again, do not want to put the communities at odds with the senior citizens. That's just not fair at all to any of us by doing that, and especially not to them.
Talk about your plans for, for veterans programs, for the VA, any of those plans you might have.
Sure. Well, it's interesting you say that, because I've just gotten a couple of requests from different veteran groups to look up different bills that are currently in Congress right now. So I think the most of them right now is sort of chasing down some of the bills that have been proposed. That's what I'm being asked to do. Like, where are they? Are they sitting in committee? Are they getting pushed through? So that's kind of what I'm going to look at right now. There's already two that people have asked me about, and chasing those down and seeing where they are. But I think in terms of the veterans also, we got to make sure, in healthcare in particular, I mean, the whole veteran healthcare system is another socialized medical system, and it doesn't always work the best. It just doesn't. And there's some very systemic problems in those kinds of programs. However, that being said, the VA has done incredible work to improve their healthcare, to improve their system. And I hear from a lot of veterans, I ask them all the time, what VA are you going to? What do you think about the care? And I'm always getting great marks on the VA healthcare systems now. So you couldn't hear that 5 to 10 years ago. It would have been a whole different story. So bravo to the VA for making changes and listening to the veterans. And we're going to continue to make sure that we listen to the veterans, and we, shore up some of the programs that they're still having difficulties with.
Julie, can you talk about what committees you'd want to serve on if elected to Congress?
it's like one of those things where it's like, I've got to print these things out. There's a lot of them, and originally I thought that I would want to serve on the healthcare and do that. But, the whole healthcare thing has a lot of different things thrown in it. I really would like to serve on something like for small business and economy, and then also looking at foreign affairs. But I would suspect that being a junior congresswoman or junior congressperson, that there's some pecking order that goes in, as we found on the city council, that you have to earn your way up. But I would hope that they would utilize the skill sets that I bring, which of course is the healthcare. And, I'm very good at the resourcing of healthcare. So that's something a lot of people aren't very knowledgeable about, is resourcing healthcare and where the dollars come from and so forth. So that's something I hope that they leverage. And then, of course, my experience with leadership and just foreign affairs. We talked at, I think, our very first interview. We talked about foreign affairs, and it's just crazy. And I've kept up with it. I keep up with what's going on in the world. So those are the two things I'm sort of looking at right now. But we'll see. I'd take anything. I would take anything. I just want to represent District 4. So whatever they give me, I think I'll do it good.
So can you just briefly talk about how it's been campaigning? You can't really knock on doors the way you probably want to. And so how's it been, kind of doing this kind of stuff, I assume? Like, what kind of things have you been doing to campaign during this pandemic?
It's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of, doing these sorts of things I can't even tell you how many shows or who I've been on with, but all kinds of radio shows, all kinds of TV shows. Even the news. It is difficult because I do have to say there is a bias definitely in Massachusetts. And I used to think, no way, there's not. But there is. And that's unfortunate. And I've been victim of that bias. One of the things we had to do was go out and get signatures. And thank goodness the signatures were done electronically. This is the first time that they were allowed to become electronic. But the difficulty, I said, piece of cake, right? Electronic, I can just sit here, and that's not true. So each one of these papers had to be delivered to 34 cities and towns, hand delivered. And my team, I found a team very quickly. We delivered 3 times. 3 times. I had to get 1,000 signatures. I turned into the Secretary of State 1,056. And I had thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of paper out there. And for various reasons, they weren't in the right district, or they didn't sign it right, or whatever the situation was. And then there was very much difficulties with that process. I had a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems with what I saw, potential for tampering, potential for corruption, all of those things. So I'm not a fan of the mail-in voting. And it's because of my personal experiences that I went through. Now, these clerks, they're wonderful. They do the best they can with the instructions they're given. But, when you have to go and you're putting your signatures into a copy machine box that nobody's watching, and you have 11 other Democrats coming behind you running for the same seat, putting their information in the same box, that is not a secure system. That is an invitation to tampering and corruption in my mind. And so I videotaped all of this, and I turned in an affidavit to the Secretary of the State, Galvin, expressing and detailing all of the concerns that I saw. So, but haven't heard a word, of course. So just that Republican out there, in Massachusetts District 4. So.
All right, we're out of time, Julie. It was great talking to you. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thank you. Great. So if you want to find out more, please, I am running for Congressional District 4. I do have I didn't make it, so it's beautiful. I can say that. It's www.hallforcongress.com. Bring it up when the lights are out. It's a beautiful thing that kind of lights up. Very, very nice. So please, if you have any questions after looking at my issues, you can contact me. There's an info@hallforcongress.com, and you can call my telephone number, the campaign telephone number. I actually call people back.
Thanks everyone for watching, and make sure you tune in again for another episode of Headway. Thank you.